This is going to be an 90% NMG tutorial. I'm going to start off with some like general movement uh, that is very important to know for this speedrun, and definitely important if you want to be as fast as possible. So first thing I'll go over is sliding off ledges, meleeing off ledges. This is probably the most common form of movement tag in the game, maybe like the second most common, but point is you're going to use it everywhere. Um, so when you slide off a ledge, because of like how the vertical momentum of sliding works, you're going to hit the ground sooner than if you just fall down the edge. And sliding also gives you some forward momentum when you fall off an edge. Whereas normally when you fall off an edge, she kind of like goes to 0 and then speeds back up. But when you're sliding off, she keeps her speed is constant. So she travels further and she also hits the ground sooner. But the big thing is the fact that she travels further. Another time saver off of ledges is meleeing off of ledges. Off of higher ledges, this is faster than sliding generally, if your goal is just to go forward. I mean, as you can see, it takes me pretty far here. So it saves like 4 to 5 frames off of this ledge, I would say. And for this, you're meleeing and then you respin as soon as possible. Which the respin is what saves most of the time. Because with the slide, you can't respin as soon as possible because of coyote jumping, which I'll go over that later. The point is, it does take time to respin when you slide off a ledge. So another thing to go over is like what ledges to slide off of and which ones to melee off of. So in general, if a ledge is 2 blocks off the ground like this, then sliding off of it is the optimal choice. Meleeing sometimes is optimal, but it rarely actually saves enough time. Just because you're hitting the ground later. So like, you'll save time, you'll get to this spot sooner, but you won't get to this spot sooner, if that makes any sense. When it comes to ledges that are 1 tile off the ground, don't do anything with these. There's like one situation where you start on one and then you want to melee off of it, but that's literally one situation. You just want to walk off of these because you retain all of your momentum here. So doing anything else, you just lose time. But if you start on one, you are still retaining your momentum, and your momentum is 0. So in that case, you would want to melee off. Another reason to melee off a ledge is to skip another ledge, like this. If I were to just slide off these ledges, I have to land on this one, which is slow because I have to go from, 0 to 100 again to get off this ledge. Not necessarily 100, but obviously you could skip this with a coyote jump, but that's even slower than just landing. So in this case, we just melee, skip the ledge entirely. Very fast. Next, I want to go over ledge hops, ledge climbing, and ledge mantling. So let's go over ledge climbs and ledge mantles first. So these are like, okay, a ledge climb, you grab a ledge, you press jump or you press up and she climbs up the ledge. That's pretty self-explanatory. A mantle is when you are landing on a ledge, but you kind of like stumble on the corner of it. So she does this little animation, and that is slower than just jumping up cleanly like this. And then ledge hops are a faster way to avoid ledge climbing. So the way ledge hops work, you will jump towards the ledge, and then you will press jump a little bit before or as you grab the ledge, and just do the shortest possible jump from that. Normally, your jump height, you have like a minimum jump height, even if you only press jump for a single frame. Like the difference between like a single frame and 2 frames is nothing on the ground. But from a ledge hop, it does matter. Ideally, you always press jump for 1 frame for a ledge hop, but that's obviously impossible to do consistently, just because of the way because of the way input processing works for video games. It's just not possible to do 100% consistently. But ideally, it's as short as possible. There are some situations where you want to jump higher, like up here as an example. I'm jumping higher on this ledge hop so I can get to the next ledge sooner than if I were to do this, where I land on this ledge and then jump. It's less inputs and it's faster in this situation. So that's how ledge hops work. Ledge hops, you're going to use them everywhere. It's probably the single biggest contributor to time loss in the run when it comes to movement. So really get good at these. And like I said, they can be buffered. Like, you have so much time to do these. Alright, next I want to go over some underwater movement when you don't have gravity suit. Obviously you move slower underwater when you don't have gravity suit. And there are some like weird movement quirks you need to keep in mind. So when you're moving in a straight line like this, you don't want to be on the ground. You want to be in the air as much as possible, because Samus's aerial speed is just faster underwater without gravity suit than walking. Ideally you're morph jumping the entire time, but this isn't really... You're not really able to do that in a lot of situations because you kind of need to wait for the unmorph to happen. So like if you're morph jumping and then you need to unmorph in the air, that's just like straight up slower than if you were to just keep jumping in standard form. But theoretically, you would always be morph jumping in a straight line in any situations that it applies to. Something that's also worth noting is if you're in a tunnel here, it is faster to just spam jump. It might not seem like it, but it does save time. I promise you. And it's actually useful for a lot of strats in the game. Just like timing certain things in certain rooms. Another thing to, I guess, ledge hops, underwater ledge hops are somewhat important. Usually they're not that important, but you can't do a ledge hop the same way underwater. You'll just buffer a ledge climb. So what you need to do for underwater ledge hops is hold away, then jump, and then jump wherever you want to. And this one is a bit harder. Like, if you do too short of a jump, you're gonna mantle, which will lose time over just ledge climbing normally. So it is a bit weird to get used to. And if you jump too much, then it can get like weird with spacing. Especially because a lot of the situations where you're doing this, you're going from water to out of water. Just like here, as an example. Going from water to not in water anymore. And aerial speed is slower than running speed in out of water. Alright, now I'm going to start going over some movement techniques that are a little bit more situational. Or just, you know, you'll use them in the speedrun, but they're not like that important. One of those things is slope jumping. So normally when you land on a slope, you're forced into this sliding animation, and even if I input jump as soon as possible, it won't let me jump until I've been on the slope for like half a second or something. But we can get around that by holding free aim on the slope, or until we get to the slope rather. It delays the sliding animation, and we're still able to jump off of the slope in this time. So we can, you know, cut down the distance it takes to jump. This is especially useful here in Dairon, because going up this magnet the normal way is really slow. Like, even if you try and make it quick like this, it's still slower. And it's harder, in my opinion, to do it that way. But slope jumping lets you skip that. almost entirely. And you can also add a Phantom Cloak right after your jump to ensure that your horizontal speed is lower. So you'll grab the magnet further left here. Like that. And there are some situations where I can grab the magnet and immediately jump off. But that's pretty rare. But you probably use this like 2 to 3 times in the run. It's not really that useful. But it is something you can practice a lot. So, and it's actually useful for a trick in other categories. So I would say it's worth learning regardless. Now I want to go over quick charging. So quick charging is just a way to get a full charge beam faster. Normally you have to wait a full second before you can shoot a charge beam, but you can get around this by interrupting a spin jump or doing a turnaround. So the way you would do this for a turnaround, you would start holding shoot, turn around, and release it. Pretty simple. And you can hold the direction you want as well. Although it's much harder to control the angle with the turnaround because you have to like flick the stick a little bit. It's kind of awkward. So that's where interrupting spin comes into play, because this you can just hold the angle the entire time, and you have much more control over where it goes. This is pretty self-explanatory. You do a spin jump, and you release shot after a certain amount of time. You can't do this like immediately, but you do. I think you would need to wait. I think it's like 5 frames or something. Someone figured it out at some point, but I don't remember the exact number. It is a very short amount of time, but it is an amount of time, so do keep that in mind. Especially when you're adding in missiles for certain bosses, you have to wait longer before you can do your quick charge again. Alright, next I want to go over instant sparks. So there are a few different ways to instant spark. The most common you're going to use are shot sparks. This is done by doing a spin jump, pressing jump, and then pressing shot shortly after the second jump press. So remember, it's just spin jump, jump, well, spin jump, release jump, press jump again, and then shot shortly afterwards. That's all the inputs you need, and you can go any direction with this. So that's the most common type you'll see. Obviously, if you press shot before it, you'll just shoot, and that's not good. You can press shot like a couple frames before the jump repress, but I really wouldn't recommend that. I would just do jump shot in quick succession. Another way to do it, this is the easiest way, is to use a melee. You just melee, press jump during it, and then hold the direction you want to go. This works in the air, on the ground. It works with moving melees, works with standing melees, so yeah. You can also do it out of a flash shift. This is probably the easiest way. You can buffer the jump input by so much like this. There are some like weird quirks of flash shift, like you don't necessarily want to do this in every situation. Let's see, you can also do it off of a Shine Spark store. This is the fastest form of instant sparks. Probably one of the harder versions as well. Basically, you just press down to store, and then you immediately press jump afterwards in the direction you want to go. So this is used quite a bit in the run, and there are a few situations where you're diagonal sparking from it, which is really, really difficult. But it can be consistent. It's not so tight that it's not possible. Instead of shot sparks, you can also do it with aim, but I really wouldn't suggest this. In this case, you would press aim, release, and then press jump. So it's kind of hard to do. Um, but it is something you could do instead of shot sparks if shot sparks are a little too difficult for you, and you just prefer these for whatever reason. But like I said, I would try to avoid these. Alright, the final two things I want to go over are things that are only used like one time, basically, but they are very important to learn if you want to do the fastest possible route and the fastest possible strats. I will give alternatives to those in later parts of this tutorial, but I would really suggest getting good at these regardless. Because if you do eventually want to do those routes and strats, then they're going to be really important. And these two techniques are pretty difficult. So the first one you'll use is wall stalling. So the way like the first 4 minutes of this game goes, you start in this room. You know, you make your way over. You know, go up to climb. You do the first enemy skip. You do early cloak. And in the past, the route was, okay, let's go to Corpius, get Phantom Cloak early, you know, go to this Atom station, go all the way around, and then we get Charge Beam, like 4 minutes in. So there was a trick found about 2 years ago at this point, where we can skip this whole section up here and the Atom conversation, which breaks Atom earlier, by doing a trick called Emmy Bump, which we do in this room right here. So this ledge is a bit too high to coyote jump to normally, but we can manipulate the Emmy onto the ceiling and then melee him, and meleeing him will push us back so we can grab this ledge, and then we parry him to disable the alarm, and then we go down and get Charge Beam much earlier than when you're intended to. So we get Charge Beam in about 2 minutes in this route, and it saves about 1:15 in total, I think, maybe a little bit less. And it's right at the start of the run. Very difficult trick. Also requires an Emmy parry, which is RNG, sadly. So there is that to think about when you're considering this trick. But the main part of this trick is something called a wall stall. So if I can do it correctly, jeez. So right now I'm kind of like wall jumping close to the same spot every time. If I were to just not do what I was doing there, I would lose a pretty significant amount of height every time, which makes the trick a lot harder. But if you properly learn wall stalls, you can basically, you do one, and then you do the wall jump parry. If you haven't seen this trick, don't worry, I will go over it eventually, and this will make a lot more sense. But I am just trying to explain why we would be doing this in the first place. The inputs for wall stall, you wall jump up the wall, and then hold free aim towards the wall. And then when you get to an acceptable height, like if you do a wall jump that's like this high, that's not acceptable. If you do a wall jump that's about this high, where I'm reaching this like white line up here, that's good. That's the kind of wall jump you want. Once you reach the peak of your height there, you release free aim while still holding towards the wall. And then very shortly afterwards, you let go of jump and then respin. And in theory, if you do this correctly, you can stay on this wall specifically for like 8 wall jumps or something. So I'm kind of out of practice on doing it perfectly, but point is, like, you can stall for a really long time. Thankfully, you only need to do 1 for Emmy Bump. And the first one is always the easiest as well. The other wall-related technique has to do with just single-sided wall jumps, or single wall jumps. Normally you would need flash shift for this, or like spin boost. But you can use Morph instead, by you're taking advantage of how Morph will just kill your horizontal speed. So the way these work, you have to wall jump off the wall. Well, ideally you jump towards the wall and you're holding neutral on the stick here. You just like don't even touch the stick. Then you wall jump and morph immediately afterwards. So when you see this, like, it gets you the height, but it doesn't put you so far away from the wall that you can't, you know, wall jump again. Like if I just wall jump normally, I can't reach the wall soon enough to go higher. But with this, we can. And the way you do the rest of this is you need to unmorph at the peak of your jump, and then respin back towards the wall. So it's a thing where, you know, you're holding neutral and then you have to hold back very quickly and then go neutral again to chain these. Usually you'll have to do this 4 or 5 times in a row for Kraid. And it saves a lot of time on Kraid and like eliminates some RNG. So this is very useful to learn. And I'm making it look easy right now, but it's really not. Like it takes a long time to really get good at these, to where you can do them consistently. And another thing to help with like consistency and gaining height is when you wall jump, don't stop holding jump until you see Samus get to the peak of her jump. If I were to like go of jump earlier, you see she kind of like doesn't get as much height. It's been a while since I've done it without doing that, but you can see like I can gain so much less height this way, and then you would have to do more wall jumps, which is not ideal. So hold jump after the wall jump. You know, make sure you jump towards the wall, you go neutral on the stick, wall jump, morph, respin, or rather unmorph, respin at the peak of your jump. So I use up to unmorph here. I don't like to use the slide button to unmorph like I would in a lot of other situations. It's just easier for my hands to do, personally. But if you use morph to unmorph there, it's not a big deal. So that's pretty much everything I wanted to go over in this general movement tutorial. So what I'll be doing is I have a template run of like very consistent strats and no mashing that I'm going to use to go over the route and like explain what to do in certain situations, and like alternative strats as well. And I'm going to try to include a lot of visual cues and timings that are really important in the run. So it'll kind of be a done in real time thing. It won't be like a scripted video, which will increase the runtime of the video, but it should hopefully give people a better idea of what is optimal and what is like what you should be doing in every situation and how to do it consistently, because that's always the important part, is the consistency. So yeah, I mean, that's basically it. I'm also going to make a raking tutorial. If you don't know what that is, make sure to watch the tutorial, because it's a method of mashing. It's probably the fastest method of mashing, period. And it is not physically straining almost at all. There's like a small amount of physical strain, but it's mostly just technique and not raw speed that you need. So watch out for that. And yeah, I'll probably be working on this tutorial over the next month or so. I hope to have it done sooner rather than later, but these things do take time. But anyways, see you.